Welcome to Impact Makers Radio, featuring industry thought leaders sharing problem-solving insights to help grow your business and live the life you love. And here's your host, Stewart Andrew Alexander.
Hi, and welcome to another Let's Talk Divorce conversation. And during this segment of the show, ladies and gentlemen, I am so pleased to say that we finally have, I'm saying finally because he's such a busy professional, but we finally have attorney at law Scott Winkler, owner of the law offices of B. Scott Winkler, calling in all the way from Bakersville, California. Now, Scott will be talking to you today about throwing out fault and resentment and becoming co-parents. So if you are one of the increasing amounts of people in the Bakersfield or Shafter, California area who can relate to today's topic, you might just want to take a break. Log out of Facebook, give Twitter a break, even log out of Instagram or anything else you happen to be doing. Grab yourself a notepad and pen and get ready to take some notes as we listen in to what Scott has to share with us today. So with that said, let's not keep him waiting any longer. Welcome to the show, Scott.
Welcome. Very nice to talk to you.
You are so welcome. Really glad to have you on. So let's just jump feet first in, Scott. I understand that you're going to speak on the topic of divorce today. However, I also know that you're so much more than a family law attorney. So that said, could you then briefly describe the kinds of people who you serve and the various types of situations they find themselves in when they come to you for your help?
My practice is primarily based on doing divorces, dissolutions, which include obviously modifications of child support, visitation, custody, as well as I do a large portion of criminal defense, anywhere from minor misdemeanors to the most serious felonies.
Okay, so describe some of the situations that people find themselves in when they come to you for your help, and especially when they need help surrounding the topic of divorce.
In California, your typical divorce at the typical age is going to be somewhere between probably late 20s when our demographic to 40, let's say. Mm. So you're generally dealing with minor children. You're dealing with people, unless they're, fortunately wealthy, that people are middle class, very middle class in this area. And it becomes more of a fight and a tug of war and who's going to get on top of the other, for lack of a better word. Because there's so much anger, resentment, fault, whatever the issue may be, because once you file those papers, there's no turning back for the most part. And a lot of anger from that marriage just comes over you like a tidal wave for both parties.
Okay, Scott, now that we know who you help, before we go any further, we have to let the listeners know out there that anything you share with us from this point on is not legal advice or legal assistance. It's purely for the purpose of disseminating information. Now, can we both agree on that then, Scott?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay, so with that said, what's the most common misconception you come across while you're out there working with your clients?
It's really quite consistent. When it comes to divorce, you're looking at couples that they always believe they're, first of all, the best parent, number one. Number two, they think that the other party always gets what they want. They don't get anything. That's a big one. There's always a major fight over timeshare because it directs and dictates how much money they're going to pay and how much they're going to see the kids. And at the end of the day, they all funnel down to the kids being the prize.
Right. So based on what you just shared with us in Scotland, those were 4 great misconceptions. And obviously, keeping your client's confidentiality in mind, please share an example or a case study, so to speak, of how you've helped or even how you would go about helping someone who came to you with those challenges or those misconceptions you just described, and what kind of transformational results you were able to or would be able to gain for them.
Okay. In California, we'll have, let's say, for example, joint legal and joint physical custody, but the primary caretaker is the one that will spend the most time with the children and be the one that, is there on the daily duty. The biggest problem we have is if you have to have some flexibility as a primary caretaker, because that parent has it about 80% of the time. And if either it's the mom or the dad not willing to bend around the other party's schedule, you're going to find yourself in court over and over to the point where you get labeled by the judge because there's so many papers in the file. For example, a whiner, a complainer, always wanting more.
As a reminder, my guest today is attorney Scott Winkler, owner of the law offices of B. Scott Winkler in Schaefer, California. Now, today's topic is throwing out fault and resentment and becoming co-parents. With that in mind then, Scott, and for those people who are listening right now and wanting to know more, please share one common but unknown pitfall that they need to avoid regardless of what situation they find themselves in.
Oh, without a doubt. Allowing the kids to be involved in the decisions or the conversations that take place in the courtroom or between the parents. There's just absolutely nothing worse than bringing kids involved in that situation. I'll give you a great example. It would be, let's say, father gets alternate weekend visits. During that weekend, the common complaint will be the father spends 2.5 to 3 days of the children saying, Mom tells us A, B, C, and D negative things about you, Dad. Why is she doing that? And of course, Dad, instead of saying, well, that's a grown-up issue, let me discuss it with Mom, generally says, oh, really? Well, did your mom ever share these 5 negative things against her? And what we have now is kids getting way too much information with parents that they both love. And that's the biggest misconception that parents just don't get. Kids don't know about divorce. Kids know about loving each parent.
Yeah, I can totally concur with this because I was a child of divorce myself, and unfortunately found myself in that position where my parents played this ping pong game. You know, your father's this and your mother's that, and you're absolutely right. You don't understand divorce. You just know that something's quite not right, and mommy and daddy are not loving each other. And I unfortunately ended up blaming myself and living with that guilt right into my teens and into my early adulthood years. And it took me a very long time to shake the psychological fallout of that guilt that I carried, even into my mid-20s. You know, it took a very long time of inward reflection and a lot of reading a lot of self-improvement books and speaking with professionals to rid myself of that guilt that my parents placed on me as an 8-year-old boy through going through their divorce. So I can totally concur with what you just shared with us there, Scott. Do you have an experience like that with any of your clients?
It's funny you mentioned that. I was just reading an article the other day in a law magazine where it literally said it's generally between the ages of 25 to 30 where the child of a divorced family, where they were, caught up in that type of web, literally comes to terms with it or is going to face some type of, emotional issue, because it's similar to post-traumatic stress for a child. They go through it for 10, 15 years, and it takes another 10 to really get it out. And it's you're taking a lot of years off a child's life.
You've got me kind of curious now, Scott. How many years have you been a practicing attorney?
18 years.
When you think about all of those people who you've helped, what's most important to you about being able to help your clients to achieve their desired outcomes?
It's funny what you said earlier, because I'm opposite of you. My parents were married. They're still married for over 60 years. Mm-hmm. I've been divorced, and I had to go through the pain of raising children, trying to co-parent.
Right.
And just recently, my oldest son is now 25, and he's at an age where we can talk as adults, and he said, Pop, when we were going through a divorce, you and Mom a lot of times never realized all we did is want to hang out with one or other, either Mom or Dad.
Right.
We wanted to just love with you guys. And you were so caught up with the fight or the argument, a lot of times you forgot to do so. That was the biggest lesson I learned, not from my own son, because now in my very first interview, I will ask them, what are you looking to get out of this divorce? Not just from an asset or debt standpoint, but what, when you walk out of here, would make you feel happy? What's your goal? And that's when I lead them down to the importance of having healthy, happy children that are going to come into being productive adults. So I'm able to turn it around.
Absolutely. So what do you get from that then when you're able to turn it around, and what do you actually get from that personally?
It helps me. Divorce in California almost takes a year and a half before it's really concluded.
Okay.
It allows me to always go back to that initial interview. And I say, remember when we talked the first time and you were bringing up the house and the spousal support or child support, and when I brought up the children, you then said, yes, you know what, that really is number one. It gives me that point to go back to and say, how have you done? In this so far?
Right.
And a lot of times we react so much better once we've been warned.
Spend a brief moment telling us a little bit about your background, and especially your formal education and your experience as it relates to the topic of family law then, please, Scott.
Formally, obviously I got my degree in pre-law, and I double degreed with a pre-law in finance. After that, I went on to California Pacific School of Law in California. As soon as I got out of that, I went to an old family friend who was a very well-known certified specialist in family law. And he said, before I bring you aboard, I want you to get your feet wet in another field. And he's the one who said, go off on your own. And that's how I got into criminal. I started doing criminal defense work. And after about 7 years of doing that, I hooked back up with this old friend, and we got together and joined as a partnership for a long time until he retired. And that's how 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I started getting my feet into more of the family law and realizing that I could do a whole lot more good. There's such a negative connotation involved with it. I started realizing, you know what, you can have something to say about this. You can really do something right for these people
and put them back on the right track, right?
Absolutely. It's very rewarding if you keep the money out of it and you look to what you have the opportunity to do. It can be an extremely rewarding experience.
So as you think about those people who you help then, Scott, what final thoughts would you like to leave them with before we finish up with our last question for today?
I'll leave the final statement with what a judge I've heard say 100 times. When you have children and going through divorce, you're divorcing that human, that husband, that wife. But those kids will be yours the rest of your life. And how you act right now is going to dictate how those kids are going to act, how they're going to react, how they're going to behave for possibly the next 10, 15, 20 years. Yeah. So always remember that you're not just going through a divorce. You're going through a family dissolution. And you need to be cognizant of that. So, like I said, he's one of the best judges, I think, on the bench here, and he really is educated and pronounces co-parenting very well.
Yeah, he sounds like a really smart guy, because that hits the nail on the head. Absolutely, 100%. And it's something I always say to my listeners, regardless of what situation you find yourself in, you might be at loggerheads with each other. There might be a lot of conflict there. You may be even fighting with each other. I always say, put the children first. Love your children more than you hate each other. So,
exactly.
That's what it comes down to, is just having that responsibility and having a great big pair of kahunas to do that, because it does take courage to do that. It's easy.
Easier said than done.
Exactly. So anyway, Scott, if there is somebody out there who's listening right now and they feel that they want to know more about throwing out fault, they've had enough of that, and resentment, they've had enough of that too, and they want to become a great co-parent. If that's the case, how can they find you? What's the easiest way?
I would say the easiest way would be my website. Is www. It's one word, no spaces, theshafterlawyer.com. And that is SHAFTER. That's a small rural city 5 miles outside of Bakersfield. And there's plenty of information on the website. And of course, my telephone numbers are available, secretaries, and I'll be happy to talk to anybody.
Please just share your telephone number now, because not everybody might have access to the internet.
For those who need a number, it's area code 661-746-0235.
Perfect. Okay then, Scott, that's all we have time for today. The time has just flown by so quickly, and I know that was a 30,000-foot view of the amount of information that you could share and the amount of assistance that you can and do give on a regular basis to your clients. But we are out of time. So as a reminder, ladies and gentlemen, that was attorney Scott Winkler. Thank you so much for sharing so generously with us today, Scott. You have certainly demonstrated that you are a true educator and advocate for your client success. So thank you.
Well, I thank you very much. I thank you for the time. Take care.
You are so welcome, Scott. And I'd also like to take a moment to say a big thank you to you. Yes, the listener. Without you, we wouldn't have anybody to speak to. So thank you for joining us on what I can only describe as a very insightful and informative discussion with one of the leading attorneys in the Bakersfield and Shafter, California area today. Again, his name is Scott Winkler. Make sure you do check him out, give him a call, visit his website. There's some great resources on there. Whatever you do decide to do after listening to him today, I'm sure you're going to be in good hands. So that's it, folks. Again, my name is Stewart Andrew Alexander, and we'll be back shortly with some more leading family law professionals in this, our series of Let's Talk Divorce Conversations. So until then, take care, have a great day, and we'll talk real soon.
Thank you for tuning in to Impact Makers Radio. To listen to all past, present and future industry thought leaders and trendsetters, visit us at impactmakersradio.com.